The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Esteemed President, venerable heads of state and government, Honorable Secretary General, distinguished delegates, on behalf of myself and my nation, I would like to wholeheartedly greet you. I wish that the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly will be beneficial for our countries and the entire human race. I'm very pleased to be at the General Assembly again after 2 years to address you, because as the humanity in the last 2 years, we've really been through painful times. We have lost 4.6 million people, including our friends, relatives, and loved ones during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was labeled as the biggest health crisis of the last century. Despite all the efforts displayed and the progress we've made in vaccination, we still witness the continuation of the negative ramifications of the pandemic. In such a climate that we are observing the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. And I do believe that the messages of solidarity and cooperation, which we will be conveying here, will not only support the fight against the pandemic, but also increase the hopes of billions of people who are going through very challenging times. Our General Assembly needs to be strengthened so that the international community can contribute more effectively to the solution of global problems. And I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Mr. Volkan Bozkır, President of the 75th General Assembly, for his fruitful work towards that direction. And I do believe that Mr. Abdullah Shahid, who recently assumed the presidency of the 76th General Assembly, will carry the flag forward to greater heights. And as Turkey, we will continue to fulfill our responsibilities so that the General Assembly can carry out its activities in the most efficient way. On this occasion, I also would like to congratulate Mr. Guterres, who once again assumed the duty of United Nations Secretary General, and wish him continued success. It's extremely fitting that this year's General Assembly has been organized under the theme Building Resilience Through Hope. First of all, I would like to express one fact, no matter how painful it might be to hear. Unfortunately, we were reminded once again during this pandemic that the entire world are a part of a big family. But the solidarity test that we were put to failed us miserably. Especially the underdeveloped countries and poor segments of the societies were literally left to their fate in the face of the pandemic. The distorted structure of the global system, which rather creates problems instead of solutions, deepens those problems and condemns them to insolvency, also holds its share in the increased loss of lives around the world. At a time when millions of people have lost their lives and tens of millions of people are suffering in the grip of the virus, it is a disgrace for humanity that the vaccine nationalism is still being carried on through different methods. It's clear that a global disaster such as the COVID-19 pandemic can only be overcome through international cooperation and solidarity. It's not possible for any country to survive safely on its own before all countries are free from this pandemic. We hope that the will which we will be showcased in the General Assembly will constitute a turning point in understanding this fact for what it is. In addition to the importance of global cooperation during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to observe the high level that medical science has achieved. We took pride in the fact that the first vaccine approved by the WHO has been developed by two scientists of Turkish origin living in Germany. We, as Turkey, have tried to share the capabilities at our disposal with our friends and brothers and sisters around the world from day one, which complies with our belief, which is basically, let the people live so that the state can live. While providing, on the one hand, the best health care services to our citizens, we also sent medical aid to 159 countries and 12 international organizations. On this occasion, I would like to inform you that we will offer in the near future our national vaccine called Turkovac to the benefit of all humanity together with our nation. We support the initiatives towards strengthening the World Health Organization and preparing a convention against pandemics. We also emphasize, in particular, that a reasonable balance should be established between the protection of public health and the continuation of social and economic life. Distinguished delegates, the events that we've witnessed remind us some of the realities once again. Our joys, like our sorrows, our sufferings, like our achievements, and our problems, like the solutions, are all common. When somebody acts with a fait accompli logic, the entire humanity would pay the bill, not just the major countries. We witnessed, lastly, in Afghanistan, in a very painful way, that the problems cannot be solved by imposing methods that do not take into account the realities and the social fabric on the ground or in the field. The people of Afghanistan have been left alone. They were abandoned with the consequences of instability and the conflicts that have lasted for more than 4 decades. Regardless of the political process, Afghanistan needs the help and solidarity of the international community. We hope that peace, stability, and security will be established in the country as soon as possible, and that the Afghan people will find relief. And as Turkey, we will continue to fulfill our fraternal duty towards the Afghan people during their difficult days. 10 years have gone by in the humanitarian drama in Syria, which caused the death of hundreds of thousands of people and the displacement of millions of people before the eyes of the whole world. While our country embraces close to 4 million Syrians, we are also battling on the ground terrorist organizations that have drowned the region in blood and tears. We are the only NATO ally which has fought Daesh, Korakor, and defeated this terrorist organization. Again, with our presence on the ground, we were able to stop the massacres and ethnic cleansing atrocities committed by the PKK terrorist organization's extensions in Syria. As a result of our efforts, and at the expense of our martyrs, we were able to ensure the voluntary return of 462,000 Syrians to the areas where we provided security. In a similar way, thanks to our footprint in Idlib, we've saved the lives of millions of people and prevented them from being displaced. The international community cannot allow the Syrian crisis to linger on for another 10 years. We need to display a stronger will to find a political solution to the problem based on the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254 and in a way that will meet the expectations of the Syrian people. We welcome the extension of the United Nations Humanitarian Assistance Mechanism, which is delivered to the northwest of Syria via Turkey for yet another 12 months. We hope that the conciliatory approach displayed on this issue will also be emulated in order to bring forward the political process and ensure the voluntary, safe, and dignified return of the asylum seekers. I would like to once again reiterate, in your presence, that making any distinction between the terrorist organizations in the region and using them as subcontractors in the field is unacceptable. Acts of terrorism in different countries around the world over the past 10 years have shown that terrorism is not only our common enemy, but that of the entire mankind. Our struggle against terrorist organizations that threaten the territorial integrity of Syria and our national security will continue with resolve. In our country, with the exception of the Syrians, there are also migrants under various statuses, the number of which currently exceeds 1 million. Because of the current developments in Afghanistan, we are faced with the possibility of another influx of migrants from this country. As a country that saved human dignity in the Syrian crisis, we no longer have the potential nor the capability to absorb new immigration influxes. On the basis of fair burden and responsibility sharing, it is high time for all the stakeholders to do their part on this issue. A concrete attitude now needs to be displayed against those who erode the 1951 Geneva Convention and the international humanitarian law. Distinguished delegates, thanks to our strong support for international legitimacy in Libya, a ceasefire was declared, and then the Presidential Council and the National Unity Government were formed. We will continue to support the efforts of the National Unity Government to provide public services and unify all institutions and organize elections in a timely manner. I reiterate my call to the international community to stand by the legitimate government which represents all regions of Libya. One of the most important problems that fuels instability and threatens peace and security in our region is the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. As long as the persecution of the Palestinian people continues, lasting peace and stability in the Middle East is not possible. For this reason, invasion, annexation, and illegal settlement policies must absolutely and immediately be brought to an end. We will continue to stand up against the violation of the international status of Jerusalem, which is based on the United Nations Resolution of 1947, and against violations of the sanctity of the Haram al-Sharif and of the rights of the Palestinian people. The peace process and the vision of a two-state solution must be revived without further delay. The establishment of an independent and contiguous Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital on the basis of the 1967 borders remain amongst our primary objectives. Important steps have been taken forward vis-à-vis establishing stability in the Caucasus. By exercising its right of self-defense, Azerbaijan has ended the invasion of its own territory, which has been the subject of Security Council resolutions which were not implemented for many years. This development has also enabled the opening of a new horizon ahead of us for opportunities to be explored in the region to establish a lasting and a sustainable peace. We are determined to support every positive step forward that will be taken by the parties involved. We attach importance to the protection of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, including the Crimea, whose annexation we do not recognize. Within China's territorial integrity perspective, we do believe that more efforts need to be displayed regarding the protection of the basic rights of the Muslim Uyghur Turks. We maintain our stance in favor of solving the ongoing problem in Kashmir for 74 years through dialogue between the parties and within the framework of relevant United Nations resolutions. We also support ensuring the safe, voluntary, and dignified return of Rohingya Muslims who are living under difficult circumstances in camps in Bangladesh and Myanmar back to their homelands. A fair, lasting, and a sustainable solution to the Cyprus question is possible only through a results-oriented, realistic approach. While the leader of one of the two peoples on the island, which the United Nations considers as equal, can address you, it's not fair that the other leader cannot make his voice heard on this platform. For a solution, it is necessary to reaffirm the sovereign equality and equal international status of the Turkish Cypriot people, who are the co-owners of the island. Therefore, we support the new vision put forward by the Turkish Cypriots for a solution. I hereby call on the international community to address the views of the Turkish Cypriots with an open mind and without any prejudice. The continuation of the calm environment in Eastern Mediterranean region is in our common interest. We hope that the problems regarding maritime boundary delimitation will be resolved within the framework of international law and good neighborly relations. For this, it is necessary, first of all, to abandon the mentality whereby Turkey, which has the longest coast in the Eastern Mediterranean, is completely disregarded in the region. Our proposal to organize an Eastern Mediterranean conference in which all the actors in the region will be represented for dialogue and cooperation still remains on the table. Similarly, we believe that the problem in the Aegean Sea should be resolved through a bilateral dialogue. We also maintain our determination in the European Union membership process. We are in full solidarity with the continent and the African Union also today, drawing on the strength of our deep-rooted ties with Africa, which dates back 2 centuries. With this understanding, we continue our efforts to hold the 3rd Turkey-Africa Partnership Summit in Turkey in the forthcoming periods. With our Asia Anew initiative, we are consolidating Turkey's unifying position between Europe and Asia. Likewise, we attach great significance to developing our relations with Latin America and the Caribbean region on bilateral and multilateral platforms. Turkey has been and will continue to be by the side of every step taken forward for a safer, peaceful, prosperous, and equitable world for everyone. Distinguished delegates, while the Earth embraces millions of living species on its soil, it only expects us to respect the balance of nature in return for this generosity. Unfortunately, mankind has recklessly used the resources the Earth offered us in search of progress and development, which we pursued throughout history. At the end of this process that lasted for centuries, we are now facing threats entirely caused by men, outside nature's own balance. The problems, which we may classify under topics such as climate change, air pollution, water and food security, loss of biodiversity, have reached to such an extent that will steer us from a safe and a prosperous future for the entire human race. Among these topics, climate change is one we should particularly focus on, as beyond being an environmental problem, it will lead to irreparable consequences and uncertainty. Greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, which have increased by 50% compared to the pre-industrial period, literally elevate the world's temperature. Indeed, for some time now, disasters have been occurring all around the world, caused by an increase of 1.1 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial period. We are experiencing unusual events such as floods in Asia and Europe, hurricanes in America, drought in Africa, fires in the Mediterranean basin, rainfall on the peak of Greenland, and snowfall on the deserts. These disasters not only cause damage to the environment and the ecosystem, but also threaten people's livelihoods and property. In many places, people are collectively preparing to go to other places, to migrate. However, the world hasn't still found a solution to the refugee problem caused by conflict-prone crisis regions such as Syria and Afghanistan. At this time, we don't know how to deal with the migration of hundreds of millions of people due to factors such as drought, food shortages, and meteorological events. The greatest impact of climate change will be observed on the populations living in the centers of metropolitans. For example, the city of New York, where we are right now, has gone through very challenging days as it has suffered from giant hurricanes within only a 2-week time span, which in turn caused rainfalls witnessed only once every 500 years. The destruction caused by rains affecting Western Europe has yet to be repaired. Although we, as Turkey, produce the most rapid and effective solutions in that regard, we've experienced our share of quite challenging days. A significant part of the world infrastructure is a byproduct of the last 2 centuries of human progress. So it is not possible to handle the ramifications of climate change with the existing infrastructure. The continued rise in global temperatures, hence expectations for more intense rainfalls, must steer all of us towards new pursuits. For example, it has now become mandatory for urban planning to be taken into consideration by respecting the consequences of climate change. Another danger awaiting our world is that forests, being among the most important carbon sinks, are now facing complete annihilation due to land use on the one hand and fires on the other. Another area affected by the increase in temperature is our seas. Expanding water and melting glaciers have raised sea levels by 20 centimeters over the past century. This figure is the fastest increase during the last 3,000 years. If effective measures will not be taken and greenhouse gas emissions will continue to increase, sea levels are expected to rise by more than 1 meter at the end of this century. Such a rise would mean that an important part of coastal cities and island states will be wiped out completely. Of course, this situation will also be accompanied by new and massive waves of migration. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that all these problems have come up only with a 1.1 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. I leave it to you to consider what would happen if the temperature increase would reach 1.5 Celsius or 2 Celsius, or even more. Distinguished delegates, hence, after all these developments, as the states of the world, we came together in 2015 to fight climate change, and we've agreed on the Paris Climate Agreement. The scope of the agreement is to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the midst of the century. However, the current trend shows that this is not quite possible if measures will not be taken duly. For this reason, first and foremost, it's compulsory for countries with historical accountability for the emergence of problems which led to climate change to take the main responsibility. It may be possible to prevent the coronavirus pandemic with the vaccines which were developed. However, it's out of the question to find such a laboratory manufactured solution to climate change. For this reason, also for climate change, we repeat our appeal with the motto that we continuously repeat: the world is bigger than 5. Whoever has done the most damage to nature, to our atmosphere, our water, our soil, and the earth, and whoever has wildly exploited natural resources should also make the greatest contribution to the fight against climate change. Unlike the past, this time, no one can afford the luxury to say, "I'm powerful, so I will not pay the bill." Because climate change will treat mankind quite equally. It will treat everyone exactly the same, regardless of the differences between the European or the Asian, American or the African, rich or the poor. The duty for all of us is to take measures against this enormous threat with a fair burden sharing and to fulfill our obligations duly and immediately. As Turkey, we act with this mentality. We are among the first countries to have signed the Paris Climate Agreement. However, we hadn't yet ratified this agreement due to the injustices related to stated obligations and burden sharing. I would like to announce to the whole world, here from the United Nations General Assembly, the decision we have taken following the progress made within the framework of the agreement recently. We plan to present the Paris Climate Agreement for approval to our Parliament next month, within the framework of our National Determination Contribution Statement and in conformity with the positive steps which will be taken. Before the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which will be held in Glasgow, we envisage to complete the ratification phase of the Carbon Neutral Targeted Agreement. We consider this process, which will lead to radical changes in our investment, manufacturing and employment policies, as one of the main elements of our 2053 vision. Of course, we have other measures with respect to climate change. We prepared the action plan necessary for harmonization with European Union's Green Deal and put it into effect in the past month. With the Zero Waste project led by First Lady, my wife, Her Excellency Emine Erdogan, we increased our recycling rate by 9 points in 3 years. We increased our sink areas by increasing our forest assets from 20.8 million hectares to approximately 23 million hectares. We increased the share of renewable energy resources in our electricity generation capacity to 53%. We have been promoting the steps that will structure our industry, that will restructure our industry in accordance with cleaner production activities for a better future. We are determined to bring these efforts forward by receiving the necessary financial support. Turkey is not indifferent to any global problem whatsoever, crisis or call, and will do its part on climate change and environmental protection similarly. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude my remark, I would like to emphasize once again that our belief a fairer world is possible despite the difficulties we face. In this vein, we continue to view the United Nations as the unique platform for solving issues that concern the entire human race. Our new Turkish house building, located right in front of this building, which we have officially inaugurated only yesterday, is a testimony of our trust and confidence in the United Nations system. As a country with one of the 5 largest diplomatic networks in the world, we have a strong presence in the field and at the table for conscientious and fair solutions in a very wide geography. We can build a world of peace, stability, prosperity, and happiness all together. I once again would like to greet you all on behalf of my nation and wish the 76th General Assembly utmost success. May you all remain in good health.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Turkey for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.